Hello, everyone. A very warm welcome to all our listeners to the Big Unlock Podcast Season 7. My name is Ritu M. Oberoi, and I'm the managing partner here at Big Rio Demo, and I will be your co host along with Rohit for today's episode. We are really excited and honored to have Dr. Haider Warraich from ARPA-H on our podcast today. Dr. Warraich is a cardiologist, researcher, and one of medicine's most compelling contemporary writers, known for bringing humanity, history, and philosophy into conversations about health and illness. Dr. Warraich joined ARPA-H as a program manager in December 2024. And ARPA-H is the Advanced Research Projects Agency for Health, which supports the development of high-impact solutions to society's most challenging health problems. And he's previously been a faculty member at Harvard Medical School, at Brigham Women's Hospital, and director of the Heart Failure Program. And he's written three great books, which are available on Amazon, and over 175 peer-reviewed papers. So really happy to have him here with us. And we'll ask Rohit for a short introduction, and then it's all yours, Dr. Raj. Welcome.
Great to be
Thank you,
here.
Ritu. Thank you, Ed. Hi, everyone. I'm Rohit Mahajan. I'm the CEO and also CEO of Big Rio and also the co-host of the Big Unlock podcast. Very happy to be here. Over to you, Heather.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here, Ritu. Rohit, we first met at HIMSS, and I know we've been meaning to speak since then. Lots of exciting stuff happening in the health technology space. Excited to dig in.
Great. So let's get started. So we all know that ARPA-H was created to tackle these, ambitious, seemingly intractable challenges with a very different risk tolerance than the traditional research funding. So, based on your experience there so far, which healthcare problems do you believe are truly moonshot worthy? And do you think we're really being bold enough, in the questions that we're asking today, or we're still like kind of not able to explore the entire potential of AI so far, like still being cautious?
Well, I mean, I think that if you to I think to create a thriving funding infrastructure, you need a variety of payers and a variety of funders who can really tackle different pieces of the different bottlenecks in the market. Certainly you need an agency like NIH, which has broad scale and is going to have, and much of the progress that NIH makes will be realized in over decades, if not longer, because and that is a but also at the same time, certainly you have the private funders, especially in the AI space, play a huge role as well in supporting breakthroughs and teams that are really promising. And ARPA-H is, I think, is also now there was a gap in the field. There was a gap in that there really wasn't any federal research funding agency that was focused on health that could take big swings, that could turn things around pretty quickly, that was metrics and milestones based, and that had the risk tolerance to be able to take on areas and topics that incremental progress is never going to get you through those, and that which really were of really, I think it's fair to say, of national interest, at least for the United States, but also creating common good for the rest of the world. Uh, I think our agency director, Dr. Alicia Jackson, she has I think highlighted and outlined some of the key priorities for the agency. Certainly, one of them includes winning the biotech race. Um, I think longevity and aging and reversing aging remains an area that has a lot of potential to be able to really transform health span for people around the world, defeating devastating diseases, and also focused on taking a platform approach, especially when it comes to AI. And within AI, our major investment, we have many different programs that are approaching this from many different angles. But the program I'm leading is called the Advocate Program, and the vision of the Advocate Program is really to bring AI to the bedside, bring generative and agentic AI that can essentially do everything a clinician can over the phone, and bring that through the regulatory pathway so that that can really open up this entire field for everyone. But do so in a way that's not just fast, but also done well because of just how how important this field is, how critical it is for us to get it right. And so yes, it's been, and I think that the response that the agency has had to not just this program but to many programs, I think, is a testament to just how I think important it always was to have us be as part of this ecosystem.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Dr. Rich. But I think I just wanted to get a little deeper into the speed at which,
Mhm.
AI is moving. We all saw what happened
Yep.
with Mythos, and like I'm saying, like when you take on a project, maybe even like advocate, if you have a
Yep.
3 month or a 6 month horizon, but everything is going to change like in a week, then how do you kind
Hmm.
of keep up and
Yep.
think that far ahead? That's
Yeah, so it's a great question, and I think it's actually what makes developing a government-funded AI program very difficult,
exactly,
because making the case for how you, even though you're fast, you still have timelines, and
exactly.
you still have projections, and even sometimes the most ambitious projections in this field, given how fast it's moving, you can become obsolete very quickly. So, but those are things that I've been thinking about very deeply. Others at the agency have been thinking about deeply, and I think that's what makes the AI space a little bit more challenging when it comes to developing programs. So here's how I've approached it. One is I think there's a reason Advocate is focused on the most highest risk AI and in the most regulated space. So within I think it's fair to say that there's already so much integration of AI across healthcare, but it's mostly in low risk settings. Ambient scribe technology has taken off. I think next few years, clinical decision support is going to transform how clinicians interface with the healthcare system. But Advocate was really focused on developing a patient-facing technology, so that already puts you in a high-risk category, but also high reward. And then being able to do really high capability functions such as making a diagnosis autonomously, being able to perform triage, being able to close the loop by actually providing the treatment and prescribing the treatment directly back to the patient. And then going through the regulatory pathway where there's really no precedent for technology like this. Um, and then in addition, we also focused on a relatively high risk or high risk population, which is patients with heart failure, because in part, ARPA-H believes that if you can create a demonstration for that is so ambitious, then it really opens up the field for anyone downstream of that as well. The reverse doesn't happen. So I think I think Advocate has a lot of the features of what it takes to actually be able to develop a program that's going to remain relevant with the types of timelines that we see in this field. Uh, I think the other thing that's really important is, and I tell people all the time, is that if you're developing an AI program if it doesn't sound insane to you, then it's probably not, it's probably you're gonna get scooped, right? Someone is gonna get ahead of you because if what you're doing sounds feasible today, you're
Yeah.
already, a few steps
Behind the curve.
behind, because so a lot of the work that we're developing for the future, I mean, talking about it today, you'd think that, you'd want to put me in a hospital because you think this guy is like off the rocker. But I think that is the sort of ambition that we need to approach this technology with, because so far it has delivered, and if not exceeded on expectations.
Great. But then, how do you reconcile these two things, this very supersonic speed of development versus the
Yeah.
regulated pathways, which are still stuck, and, you come up against that wall. And if it's going to take months to approve something, then you're fallen behind again, eventually.
Yep. I think that, and that's really what I think that is one of the reasons why I think an agency like ARPA-H should really, we work very closely with the regulator. FDA has never had a partner like ARPA-H before, right? They've never had a partner in government like
Mhm.
ARPA-H before that can make major investments, that can work, that can really make sure that the problems that we're fixing are problems that are going to help the regulators as well, rather than just impede their work or get in the way. And so that partnership, I think, is really, really crucial. I do think that, a lot of regulatory unlocks often are bureaucratic issues, right? Where there's a sense of you need X number of patients, you need this type of margin, you need this type of enrollment. I think in the AI space, when it comes to the regulatory blockers, a lot of them are just technical. A lot of them are we just don't have the technology that can do what we wish it what this technology needs. For example, one of the most important parts of the advocate program is not just that we are supporting the development of these technologies that are going to be classified as medical devices by the FDA, but also we are supporting and funding evaluation technology for post-market monitoring. We're calling this the supervisory agent or the supervisory layer that is going to be developed essentially at the same pace, at the same with the same types of resources, if not more, so that we are actually creating the entire infrastructure together rather than doing it in sequence. We're doing it in parallel because we understand that the traditional, timelines and pathways are just not going to work for this type of technology. So if you're going to be relevant from an evaluation perspective, if you're going to be relevant as a body that can actually administer uh, regulations on this space, that then you need that type of support, and it has to be technical support. We have to have a way to really funnel and focus the best minds and the best teams on the world on the problems that we think are going to really help unlock this field. And that's one of the things that ARPA-H can do, and that's why I think working with the regulator, making sure that we are keeping their perspectives centered on this so that we create solutions that they are going that are in agreement with their strategy and how they're looking at the world, I think is going to be critical, and we plan to keep doing that in the future.
Great. So I'll ask one more question and then I'll give Rohit a chance. So I think the most interesting thing I picked up from your conversation so far was that what the Advocate program that you're working on is patient facing, and that's
Hmm.
really interesting. So when you're talking about this level of new technology where you said it has to actually sound insane or crazy, then how do you kind of bring it to people who might not be ready for it or who
For
might,
sure. Yeah.
yeah. So
That's a great question, right? I mean, so there are two things. One is that when you start with something, you have to have an ambitious vision, but you also need to be able to scope it,
yeah.
right? You need to be able to say that, what is a really specific problem that I want to work on. So instead of saying that we are going to that the teams that advocate support are going to build like AI cardiologists, what we're focused on is, can you develop a technology that uses generative agentic AI but improves outcomes in patients with heart failure? So that immediately scopes the problem. You define who the population is, and then what are the endpoints you're focused on? What's going to go on your label? How are you going to design it? How are you going to deliver it? So I think scoping is very important. I think for this field, communication is also very important. How you talk about this technology it is much, I would say it's much more important in the AI space than almost any other space, because I do feel like people really care about this. I mean, this is not one of those fields that is working out in the corner and it's just, is doing its thing. Everyone is looking at this technology as being something that could really transform, society, healthcare, any industry that you can think of. So how, and that is obviously causing a lot of excitement, but it's also causing, as you might imagine, some anxiety and nervousness. And I think that there's also a risk that tools that are not well developed could actually add more friction to the system. They could actually, our health system doesn't have a lot of buffer. It doesn't have a lot of give. And so straining it further with technology that's not well designed or doesn't have the patient or the clinician's best interest in mind could really be catastrophic. So I do think that how we talk about this technology and how that is reflected in the design of these technologies is really, really important, to really get the market ready for this technology. I think it's clear that the technology that the tech is ready, the market needs more time, but the market also needs to see things that its fields are familiar. For example, I mean, we clinicians take risks all the time with new technology, but oftentimes like new implantable devices, things that go in your heart, right? A new type of mechanical pump. right? That as if a slightest misfunction could lead to a patient's death. New drugs, new chemotherapies, new genetic therapies. So we're taking risk all the time with new, but there's a sequence to what we see before we take that risk. Oftentimes that includes clinical trials, that includes FDA authorization. There's a precedent to what we need to see as a community to be able to take on risks that we believe the benefits will exceed the risk for the population that we use it for. And I think that's really what at least the first generation of clinical AI technologies need to be able to do. So when we're talking about patient-facing technologies, I think that the bar there is going to be, and I think it is fair to argue, should be the same as what you'd expect for a new high-risk medical device or new drug or chemotherapy. But once I think once we have that sort of foundational evidence, I think that then really will cause a um, seismic shift in how these technologies are accepted, how they're implemented, how they're deployed. And that's the one of the core sort of theses of the advocate program is that it is using even though the technology that it uses is very frontier, agentic AI for clinical care, supervisory agents for real-time post-market monitoring, etc. When you look at how we're evaluating this technology, super traditional, right? We have single site deployments, we have human factors research, we have um, IDE studies, multi-center trials. I think, outcomes that people understand, heart failure hospitalizations, guideline-directed medical therapy, mortality. I mean, those are all um, so we've chosen to innovate in the technology, but we've kept the evaluation as familiar as possible because again, I think that is the sort of evidence that people are used to seeing as they adopt new technologies. But once you have that foundational knowledge, then I think that's going to be what this field really needs to just reach its next exponent.
Yeah, great answer. Thank you. Now I'll give Rohit the turn to ask some questions.
Yeah, thank you, Ritu. So, Haider, yeah, I was making some notes, really interesting insights, and I especially like the comment that you made that FDA never had a partner in government like ARPA-H. Like, that's fantastic because I think regulatory, hurdles have to be surmounted quickly. So, but where I would like to ask you is that in your advocate program, tell us a bit more about the time horizons for the projects, the funding size, the number of projects per year, or whatever cycles you follow. That is one part of my question. Either second, that and you can take any which one first is. Tell us a bit about your story, like what attracted you to healthcare and ARPA-H, and what you're looking in the future.
Sure. So from a timeline perspective, Advocate program was launched in January. We solicited solution summaries from teams for each of the technical areas. These were focused on the development, evaluation, and implementation of clinical agentic AI, patient-facing for patients with heart failure. We then, and this is standard process for every ARPA-H program, then we encourage teams to send full proposals, and from there we make decisions about who we recommend for funding. And then our hope is that we should be able to announce the teams that we are selecting in a couple of months. So I think sooner rather than later. So that is programmatically where we are from that perspective. Um, with regards to the funding amount, usually, so these are contracts, not grants, and the typical ARPA-H program is usually between 50 to 150 million dollars. Uh, I think, but having said that, I think the value that we have, that this program was always created to provide value that you can't simply count in dollars, and that includes, and here, I think the focus from my perspective has really been on. Um, Obviously, everyone loves money, and money is great, especially if it's non-dilutive. But I think that if you're going to make a dent in the AI space, money alone cannot be it because there's plenty of money to go around. So really thinking about how are we creating value? How are we creating something important and that's valuable, in which we're really leaning into our strengths as a government agency. Therefore, focusing really on the regulatory aspect was one that was really important. Implementation, how do you get health systems to be excited about this technology in which they are? There's a lot of unknowns about how these will work, and there's going to be a lot of attention in this space. There's a lot of uncertainty, but healthcare systems wanted a partner like us who they felt they could trust as being a mediator or a convener of some of the best technology companies to come in and build these solutions. And then access to data that is going to help determine, how well these technologies are developed, and then how well they work after they've been deployed. Uh, our goal for the teams is that we want them to have a technology ready to go to FDA for market authorization within 2 years of the program starting. Um, why 2 years? 1 year fell too short. 3 years fell too long. So we settled on two.
Yeah.
And then after that, we plan to do a multi-center trial of the highest performing technologies in an integrated health system to look at clinical outcomes, but really focused on how do you implement this technology within in clinical practice. So those are some of the timelines and details about the
Yeah.
program. We hope to be able to share more over the next few months. I think there's going to be so we can be much more specific then. Regards to me, so I know Ritu is in Delhi. I grew up not far from her, but across the border in Pakistan, and went to medical school there. Was always very interested in I really approached writing as a storyteller, as a writer first. And that informed my research, that informed my clinical career. Moved to Boston for residency after finishing medical school in Pakistan. Did fellowship in cardiology. Um, was recruited, had the great opportunity to join the FDA as a senior advisor for chronic disease to the FDA commissioner. And that really brought everything in sync for me, helping me provide that regulatory perspective, uh, and really help me sort of figure out what the critical bottlenecks are going to be, but also to understand, to create a sort of common lexicon or language or that works for technologists, that works for private investors, that works for academics, health systems, and that certainly needs to work for the regulator. So just a bit about me, but yeah, but as you said at the top, I have been at the agency since almost a year and a half, and it's been really exciting.
Thank you,
I think
Heather, for sharing that. Yeah. I have a question on what you talked about, the funding cycle and the focus area. Is that going to, so that's for this year, let's say, and I guess the application cycle is already closed for the current year. So are you following January through December, and will the next cycle open in next year, January, just for the listeners to know?
Sure. So I think that there are two big. So with regards to the advocate program, we've that sort of opening has closed, and so we'll be able to make a vote. So the times really starts when we can get all our teams on contract, and then the program, that's basically day zero of the program, if you may.
Yeah.
And we're hoping that that is coming up soon for us, and I think overall it's fair to say things are going great. Having said that, there are two the way that the ARPA-H works is that program managers are actually expected to then develop new programs once they've helped launch a program and then create a new program, almost one every year. That can be that ideally should be related to or to the thesis that is being developed, and that builds on that. And so I foresee and I'm hopeful that you'll see that our team is going to be coming out with more programs similar to Advocate, but that build on it and really help extend the impact that it can have across the field. and take more shots on goal, more different approaches, because I think it's fair to say that you're going to need to have many different ways. So this is too big to fail. So you
Yeah,
can't have one program only that's trying to unlock the field. Uh, Teams are also welcome to send their ideas to ARPA-H and connect with ARPA-H program managers. Uh, I would say that that process is very competitive, and it really depends on finding sort of the right idea, the right risk space, the right team. But that's another opportunity that exists to engage with ARPA-H, and that's always open, in which teams can pitch their ideas. Oftentimes, it requires some feedback and back and forth to get them ready, to make sure that it would be a good fit. But both of those opportunities, so the investigator-initiated projects, if you may, and then agency and program manager-initiated programs, I think are the major ways that and those are always there's always work that needs to be done, and there's always new opportunities coming up.
amazing. That's
Okay.
great.
I think we can squeeze in one last question. So I would like to ask that, you seeing this field so up close, and you're really in touch with the teams which are like telling you about this future of healthcare innovation. So I'll flip the question and ask you which emerging technology do you think is receiving, more attention than it deserves? Like, why is everybody like kind of focused on that when there's so many other things we should be
Oh
looking
man.
for?
Uh my paradoxical answer is probably AI. I mean,
Good and
I think
bad.
what I will say is that I think AI is receiving the appropriate type of attention, but there's still the real gaps that we need to focus on. I think how these technologies are evaluated, especially for high risk technologies, I think real time evaluation is going to be incredibly important.
Mhm.
Uh, I think AI alignment is a space that I think is really important, which is, how do we align AI outputs with um, the preferences and taste and values of humans, um, not just as groups, but as individuals. This is incredibly important in healthcare, as I think another space that I think needs more attention. I think AI that's made specifically for the populations that live with the most need, which is
Mhm.
mostly older people, people with multiple comorbidities, people with, cognitive dysfunction, sensory issues, etc. And the elderly, I think that's developing schools that are validated for that population, where we think we can have the most benefit. I think that's a space that I think needs more attention. And lastly, I think the space, one of the spaces that I'm really interested in is that I really think that we have finally come to a point where we have the models, where we have the data, we have the compute to really be able to develop high fidelity simulations for healthcare. If you look at every other field, whether that's manufacturing, supply chain, logistics, transportation, um, defense, uh, climate, simulation is a huge part of those fields. And it remains essentially non-existent in healthcare. And part of that is because healthcare is hard, it's complicated, our data is messy. We have data streams, we have humans who act irrationally, we have patients who have their own complex physiologies, pathologies, etc. There's so much complexity in healthcare that attempting to develop real, simulations that can capture that complexity has been essentially impossible until now. So that is another space that I believe is very exciting, and has real potential in transforming how we value technologies, how do we develop them, and can hopefully shorten development cycles and implementation cycles too.
Great. Thank you. Rohit, would you like to say something or?
Yeah, anything, Haider, you would like to talk about, to close out on any one of your books that you wrote recently, or what was the last one that anything you're working on or that you just published
I can talk
already?
about the last book.
Yeah.
I will say that, before joining government, I had written 3 books over 5 years, and in some ways joining the government was my retirement from writing in a way. Um, I did feel like I wanted to take a break and I wanted to be but my last book was
Mm-hmm.
focused on chronic pain,
Mm-hmm.
in part because from a science perspective is an incredibly interesting phenomenon. From a medical perspective, I practice at the height of the opioid epidemic in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and but from a personal perspective, I'd lived with chronic pain. I'm all good now, but for many, many years I'd lived with chronic pain myself. And
Mm.
so I combine all of these sort of various things into being able to really tell the story of something that I think all of us experienced. This was a book called Song for Scars. It was published I don't know, maybe 21,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
before I joined government. So that's the most recent one. But it's been a while,
Correct.
but now I think I will say that a lot of the work that we do at ARPA-H is very similar to writing a book.
Yeah.
I didn't think it would be, but having a plan, having an outline, having a vision, and then putting the pieces together, talking to people, doing research, iterating, editing. I've seen so much and it's a very creative process too, coming up with programs. It's a collaborative effort. So unexpectedly, even though I thought I'd retired from writing, um,
Yeah.
so much of what I learned when I was writing books has really been very applicable when it comes to developing programs and working with this amazing ecosystem.
Awesome.
Thank you, Dr. Warraich. It's been a pleasure having you on our podcast. Thank you so much for joining.
Awesome.
We'll,
Awesome.
yeah,
Thank you.
we'll,
Appreciate it.
we'll